Sometimes to get a handle on the biggest, most complex challenges of our time, like our future with super intelligent AI, the best way in is through a simple story. A parable, really. So let's dive right in. We're going to start in a forest with a story that I think holds the key to the entire psychological puzzle we're facing with artificial intelligence. Okay, picture this. A fox is paw completely crushed between two heavy, unmoving rocks. It's been struggling for hours, it's exhausted, it's vulnerable, it is totally and completely trapped. Just pure desperation. And then along comes a rescuer. A forest ranger spots the fox from a distance and starts to approach very carefully. The ranger has just one goal here: move the rocks and set the little guy free. But this is where everything goes wrong. Because the fox doesn't see a rescuer. It sees a giant predator, a human, closing in at its absolute moment of greatest weakness. To the fox, this is not help. This is a mortal threat. And what happens next is it's absolutely tragic. Overwhelmed by this blind primal panic, the fox does the unthinkable. It thrashes so hard that it actually breaks its own leg, and then in one last desperate act, it gnaws through its own limb to escape the very person who is just trying to save it. So, why am I telling you this heartbreaking story? Well, because it turns out to be a shockingly perfect metaphor for our relationship with a potential artificial general intelligence, or AGI. Okay, so let's break this down. In this story, we, humanity, we are the fox. We're trapped. And AGI, well, that's the ranger. It's this incredibly powerful force that's approaching with the capacity and hopefully the intention to help us. So, what exactly is our trap? Well, think about it. We're pinned down by these massive existential problems, right? Things like resource scarcity, environmental decay, the simple fact that we age and get sick, even the limits of our own intelligence. And this is where the sheer power of AGI starts to present not just a technical challenge, but a really deep psychological one for every single one of us. In biology, there's this really fascinating concept called flight distance. It's basically the personal space bubble around an animal, and if a predator crosses that invisible line, the animal's brain just gets flooded with panic. It's pure fight or flight, and it will do anything to escape. This is exactly what happened to our fox. Which, of course, raises a pretty critical question for us right now. As AI gets more and more powerful, as it gets closer and closer to being able to solve our biggest problems, are we, as a civilization, entering our own flight distance? Is our anxiety about to tip over into full-blown panic? And that panic, it really stems from what you could call the incomprehensibility gap. See, just like the fox couldn't possibly understand the ranger's tools or intentions, we might not be able to understand the black box logic of a true superintelligence. And that's the danger zone. That's when our fear can turn a potential savior into a monster in our minds. And this brings us to the scariest part of this whole metaphor. The risk isn't just that we reject the help, it's that we might actually actively harm ourselves out of fear, just like the fox did. So what would that even look like in the real world? Well, we could panic and start dismantling the very technologies we need to solve things like climate change. We could literally start wars, try and stop AGI development, destroying civilization to save it. Or maybe we just create regulations so tight, so restrictive that they choke off any hope of a breakthrough, leaving us stuck in the trap for good. Okay, so that's the dark path. But how do we avoid it? How do we make sure the rescue actually succeeds? Well, the answer lies in how the ranger approaches the fox. It turns out real-life wildlife rescuers have a brilliant technique for this exact problem. What they'll often do is use a blanket to gently cover the animal's head. By blocking the view of the big, scary human, the animal's panic starts to subside. It comes down, and then the rescue can happen safely. And that little trick, that blanket, it gives us an amazing blueprint for AI alignment. Our visual barrier has to be built on 3 key ideas. First, subtlety. AI should feel like a quiet utility working in the background, not some dominant new ruler. Second, familiarity. We have to design AI to feel natural to us, to align with our psychology. And third, gradualism. The change has to happen slowly enough that we have time to adapt and, most importantly, build trust. And this really gets to the absolute heart of the challenge.
It tells us that AGI's success isn't really going to be measured by its raw power to solve problems, but by its finesse. The ultimate test isn't just intelligence, but a kind of emotional intelligence, the ability to free us from our trap without triggering our self-destruct button.
So at the end of the day, maybe the debate isn't really about whether AI will be powerful enough, or even if it will be aligned. Maybe the real question is an internal one. It's about us. Can we, as a species, manage our own fear? Can we learn to accept a rescue that we might never fully, completely understand? Can we learn to trust the ranger?